Thanks for inviting us. I'm sure Thierry is as thrilled as I am to have the opportunity to talk about this. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I mean, the issue of protection and the relation with mental health and psychosocial support was already, I think, mentioned greatly in the panel before. There are a lot of synergies. I would actually say that it's difficult to separate them in the sense that we are all working to make sure that we are providing support to people that are vulnerable, that are confronted to a lot of adversities. And we want, at the same time that we are assisting them and providing a response to the needs that we are seeing, we also want to make sure that protection is the key of our activities, that we are all ultimately trying to protect populations that are extremely vulnerable and affected by situations of armed conflict, violence, natural disasters, and different emergencies. So as all of you know, the ICRC has, of course, a protection mandate that is, it comes across everything that we do, and that includes mental health and psychosocial support. And I think the best way for me to share with you how we develop this work is to use perhaps a practical example, because I think this helps more than the global sort of speech. So I would like to focus on a particular program that we develop and where we work very closely with our protection colleagues, which is the programs that we provide to support families of missing persons around the world. And there are many other activities in relation to, we work together on the Central Tracing Agency, on family reunification activities, on detention activities, migration activities. So, I mean, the list is very long, but I wanted to provide the example on the support to, that we provide to families of missing persons. So, you know, we started working precisely because the whole idea of the ICRC mandate to protect and assist and respond to the crisis of the missing situation worldwide is one of our key activities. We initiated these programs at the beginning with a very clear protection framework, in the sense that ICRC works everywhere to prevent enforced disappearances from happening, right? And the center of our actions were also focused on preventing people from going missing, and work with authorities, other organizations, and involved relevant actors, so to work on this prevention aspect of the disappearances. So important, so relevant. We know that many people are disappearing in the world in all different kinds of situations. And then little by little, as I like to say, swaya pole pole, we started to think, you know, the victims are not only the people that are being missing, but also the families around them, and how the families are dealing with the suffering of having a loved one that disappeared, and how this psychologically has a tremendous impact in the quality of life of people over the world. So it's really about what we see is people that are suffering, dealing with hope and despair constantly, having this huge dilemma of how do I deal with this loss? You know, is my loved one dead? Is he still alive? Is he suffering? Is he detained? Is he being tortured? Is she or he being eaten, etc.? And all this is a constant struggle for the heart and the mind, and depletes people from energy and from resources. On top of that, when they are confronted to a lot of other situations and they have to deal with this. So it was the beginning for us to start thinking, you know, we need to do this together, in the sense that you can't separate this. When you visit a family that has a missing relative, for example, you are confronted to the need, of course, of showing the family, in the case of the ICRC, what are the activities we are doing to try to find the person, to trace the person, to identify the whereabouts. What is it that we are doing to try to prevent that this happen again? And how are we working also with authorities to create mechanisms where they start to discuss on the importance of international humanitarian law, have policies preventing disappearances, and then, of course, ensure that the rights of families of missing persons are also being respected, because there are a lot of also legal implications when a family has a missing relative, of how can they, for example, have access to, let's say if it's the husband that is missing, how can the wife get access to the pension if he's not declared dead but is missing? So there is also a lot of work in terms of the legal aspects. So this multidisciplinary vision on what will be, how can you support a family of a missing person with only one angle, right? And this was like, it may seem obvious when I say it, but it took a lot of work to actually come to the realization that in practice, those families need a lot of support, multidisciplinary support, and it cannot be done only from one angle. And so that despite a lot of the efforts the ICRC is doing to encourage authorities to create mechanisms to identify missing persons or human remains, provide answers to the families, there was also this aspect of the enormous suffering that they are confronted with, and this could not be neglected. So since 2003, we started to actually work together with our protection colleagues to precisely develop a framework of support in which we engage the families of missing to discuss with us the needs that are, and here I will also say, protection, mental health, let's enlarge also our conversation to economic needs, physical health needs, legal needs, because that's exactly it, right? So imagine, you think about, I'm gonna visit this family tomorrow, and they have millions of questions that are not only about psychological well-being, but also legal questions, protection-related questions, economic-related questions. And I think this illustrates well the challenge, right? Even if I'm a psychologist and I'm visiting this family with a therapeutic objective, it will be very ineffective if my ability to talk to this family is only to talk about, okay, I see that you have all these economic and legal concerns, but let's talk about your suffering and your symptoms and your lack of sleep. And it makes it irrelevant in a way, I would say. Of course, there is a great value on it, but I think the added value of what these programs are for us, for the ICRC, are precisely the ability of every one of us that visit those families to be able to actually tackle and talk to them about all these different issues. Now, that has required a lot of multidisciplinary work, transversal work, a lot of trainings, capacity building that we do together, a lot of discussions between colleagues from different, we call them métiers, so different kind of departments and activities. We developed a handbook that I'm sure some of you, a lot of you are familiar with, about how to respond to the families of missing persons. And this is, again, a very clear example of this multidisciplinary work. This handbook has like chapters on all these different needs and basically aims at giving guidance to people that are supporting families to understand all this transversality. So that's to say that today for the ICRC is clearer and clearer that when we are visiting people that are confronted to all these sort of situations of adversity, and here I go even outside the scope of the support to families of missing persons, but talking about victims of sexual violence, victims of violence in general, etc. This vision of being able to see all the needs and being able to work together to address them is actually a key for success in addressing these issues. And this is why we are very proud of developing, and I'm not saying it's easy all the time, right? Working with colleagues from different métiers is very challenging. We all have different languages, different ways of approaching the problem, sometimes different priorities. So it also I think it's an interesting example of how can organization and the movement in this case work better and improve collaboration. So strengthen our complementarities, using these different approaches and being able to, instead of get stuck on what makes a difference, actually is strive and use what actually the common goals that we have together. And I think this links me to the last point I want to make on this, which is again a call for us as a movement, right? We always talk about avoiding the silo talk, but I think that sometimes we need to start more walking the talk. It has become something that we said, our MHPSS is not in a silo, we don't do this. But at the end of the day, I think we still need to improve a lot in how do we collaborate with each other, how we do not duplicate things, how do we, and this is our message also, think something we are trying to work on the working groups and for the roadmap implementation, how we can sit together and see where are the gaps, who is doing what, and how can we, instead of competing or duplicating our activities, we can actually strengthen together what we can do when we put all our different knowledge and expertise. I think that Thierry will illustrate this with a lot more focus on what is the protection in the movement, as you said, Maite. But for us as the MHPSS team, we wanted to pass a very clear message that the integration with those activities on protection is a key for us to succeed. This also for us makes relevant the issue of prevention, and so that we are not only assisting, but how are we able to talk about issues such as behavioral change, issues that go farther beyond the simple assistance provision and just looking at the person or even the PSS activities that we do with the communities. I'll finalize by saying that when you look at the pyramid, again, the MHPSS framework and policy, in all these different layers, I think of the MHPSS pyramid, you can have a relation with protection activities. For many people, they may think that the farther you go along the pyramid, so when you go to specialized mental health care services, you get far away from the framework of protection activities, but that's in fact not the case. If we are to talk also about people that are mentally ill and are extremely vulnerable today, there is an amount of work that we need to do to ensure that the protection and the defense of the rights of the mentally ill are also put in the top of the agenda. No? We know that there are a lot of violations. We know that a lot of people that have mental disorders are tied to trees and tukuls, and they are receiving absolutely no support whatsoever. So that's another example of the only issue here will not be providing support or making sure that there are professionals to support those vulnerable people, but also we work together on protection mechanisms and legal mechanisms and policies that actually help us to ensure that we are passing all together the right message. For some of you that know me, you know that I could talk a lot about all those issues. So I'm looking at Maite for controlling the time, and I'll probably let Thierry to start, and I can, of course, complement after. Thank you so much.